Welcome to the biggest whodunnit in the world right now. Who sabotaged the Nord Stream pipeline? On September 26, 2022, Germany began noticing a loss of pressure in the Nord Stream pipelines that normally deliver gas from Russia. In the immediate aftermath, analysts began speculating on who could be responsible for the failure. We will discuss each of the suspects in a moment, but first, let's consider the evidence. This is updating rapidly, but accurate to the best of my knowledge at the time of recording.
It all began when Danish seismologists registered two tremors on the 26th, one at 2 a.m. local time and another at 7 p.m. Immediately afterward, Germany noticed pressure losses in the pipelines. The Danish government sent F-16 interceptors to investigate, where they discovered gas leaks surfacing. Seismologists later confirmed that the epicenters were near the leaks.
Denmark and Sweden dispatched military vessels, including this one, the Absalon, to keep civilian ships away. You might wonder about potential issues with NATO and the Article 5, an attack against one is an attack against all, provision. Some of the damage is here. The island of Bornholm belongs to Denmark, but the explosions occurred in the Danish economic zone, not actual territory. Thus, there is no Article 5 problem here. The other damage occurred in this area. This is Sweden's economic zone, not Swedish territory. Sweden is also not yet a member of NATO, so that ducks the issue for two reasons. The pipelines are mostly owned by Russia's Gazprom, but German, Dutch, and French companies hold shares, and Switzerland is a base of operations for the business. Neither of the pipelines were operational at the time. As we covered here before, Russia halted all deliveries from the Nord Stream 1 pipeline on September 2nd. Officials claim that there were mechanical issues that could not be resolved due to economic sanctions. Western sources disagreed with that assessment. Russia instead was trying to freeze Germany and break up NATO's united front. The Nord Stream 2 pipeline is new, and was supposed to begin deliveries in 2022. But Russia's invasion of Ukraine caused Germany to suspend the pipeline's certification. Nevertheless, Russia kept both pipelines pressurized, hence the gas leak. The damage to the giant steel pipes appears to be the result of multiple separate underwater explosions. The tremors were not consistent with traditional earthquakes. The likelihood that these were accidents is virtually zero. The Nord Stream 1 and Nord Stream 2 are two separate systems, and each is actually a pair of lines.
For now, only 3 of the 4 seem to be affected.
All told, it would take quite a coincidence for so many separated pipes to be hit on the same day. However, the explosions need not have come from a full-scale military vessel. It is possible that a simple civilian boat brought mines out to those depths, and then detonated them afterward. The cost of the explosions, forgetting about the environmental problems for a moment, might be enormous. Unless they are repaired quickly, the introduction of seawater will render them permanently inoperational. The cost of Nord Stream 1 was just under $15 billion, while the cost of Nord Stream 2 was just under $10 billion. That is a lot of money lost forever. Der Spiegel reported that the CIA had warned Germany that such an attack was possible in the weeks prior. The question remains, though, who would want to do that? Let's begin with the entity receiving immediate suspicion, the Russian government. Russia has been doing a lot of crazy and reckless things lately, whether it is the invasion of Ukraine, the temporary shutdown of Nord Stream 1, or conscripting hundreds of thousands of soldiers into its army to bolster the front lines. It is unsurprising that people would default to Putin's administration as being responsible for the explosions. But if they are, there is a lot more intrigue to the story than it might seem. The key piece of evidence working against the Russian government theory is that Putin already controlled whether Germany received the gas. The shock of the news did increase gas prices, but it is consistent with what a medium-term shutdown would have already accomplished. Never mind that Russia cannot fully take advantage of the higher prices because the pipeline is now broken. Long term, this ought to reduce prices, as investors now know that the pipeline will not be coming back and will put full investments into alternatives. There is talk that Russia did this as an excuse not to fulfill its contracts. But again, Russia already controlled the gas, and Putin has shown that honoring agreements is not exactly a priority. Besides, Russia was still using the mechanical issue excuse, which attempted to shift the blame to the West while not forfeiting the pipeline. Another theory states that Russia did this to signal its ability to damage other pipelines. But there is nothing particularly special about what happened, and no foreign intelligence agency would be surprised to learn that Russia had the ability to do this. A more plausible take here is a Russian false flag operation, a self-attack designed to trick average Alexanders into giving undue support to the regime. Undoubtedly, this would be a good time to improve Putin's poll numbers, with mobilization bringing the realities of the war to the forefront. And it is something that Putin has been accused of before. In September 1999, a series of bombings hit apartments in Russia. Putin was prime minister at the time. One theory is that Putin ordered them as a way to initiate the Second Chechen War, bolster his popularity, and clear the path for him to ascend to the presidency. Back to today, the pipelines would be a weird target for a false flag op. A bunch of oligarchs' money lit on fire under the sea is not going to evoke the right response for citizens of Moscow, the people that actually matter here. But let's not let Putin and friends off the hook so quickly. Remember, Russia controlled whether the gas flowed. For now, that means Putin does. But if Putin were to lose power, that decision would fall to someone else. And this would help explain what happened. Imagine moderates were thinking about initiating a coup to remove Putin from office, restore the gas sales, and begin to rebuild Russia's economy. So they forced Putin out. But now let's rewind. Putin has permanently ended part of that plan. Now initiating a coup does not look as attractive. It may even cause moderates to calculate that a coup is no longer worthwhile. That's a huge win for Putin and justifies the cost. In sum, the pipeline had to pay the price to sustain Putin's term in office. That takes us to the second suspect, Russian hardliners. As outsiders, we do not actually know the true balance of preferences and power among Putin and his inner circle. Imagine instead that Putin's main focus right now is to balance the preferences of hardliners and moderates into a coherent foreign policy. In his hypothetical job of maximizing the state's welfare, Putin would have to reason through whether to continue the fight in the following way. First, think about what Russia might plausibly expect to hold over the long term by fighting. Hypothetically, say it is this line, though obviously Ukrainian policymakers disagree with that assessment. Then deduct the loss of life and wealth from fighting, net any political benefits, and convert it into square kilometers of land. If Russia can obtain something past the red line in negotiations, then it is time to stop fighting. We have talked before about how a one-time fighting cost leads to quirky bargaining behaviors, and we are about to encounter it again. Because the distance of the red line is measuring opportunity cost, it shrinks when an act permanently eliminates a benefit that peace would otherwise grant. That pretty much describes the pipeline situation. Now Russia is willing to fight under a wider range of circumstances than before. If you are only trying to maximize your country's wealth, this is obviously a bad idea. Whatever coercive gains you might make on the ground are cancelled out by the lost value of the pipeline. If Putin is just trying to maximize the various interests of Russia, bombing it himself would be a bad idea. But think of this from the perspective of some Russian special interest, perhaps hardliners who only care about taking Ukrainian territory and are indifferent about natural gas revenues. Forcing Putin to be more reluctant to negotiate and end the war is purely a win. There is no downside. And that is why they might be responsible. Oddly, we can put the opposite end of the Russian political spectrum under interrogation as well, with Russian partisans as our third suspect. Imagine that the war is going poorly for Russia, and not just in the sense that Ukraine regained a good chunk of territory in September's counterattack. I mean that Putin's control over the government is especially perilous, and could fall apart at any moment. This represents perhaps the first real opportunity to get rid of Putin since he came to power. Oddly, they too would not want the war to end. But this time, it is because they believe that it will complete Putin's disaster. Destroying the pipelines serves multiple purposes here. It increases Putin's willingness to fight for the same reason as before. But it also makes Germany more inclined to maintain the pressure on Russia. It too now receives lower benefits from ending the economic battle. And even if they do settle, Putin will not be getting the revenues from gas sales through Nord Stream. That will make it harder for him to continue governing post-conflict resolution, which may still give the opposition a chance afterward. There is also the bonus of generally causing chaos in the country, which we have discussed before following the death of Daria Dugina, as the type of thing that partisans would be interested in doing. And that is why they may be responsible for the attack. Moving on, our fourth suspect is Ukraine. The motive here may seem obvious, but the deeper logic grows more complicated. Permanently shutting down the pipeline appears to economically cripple Russia, shrinking Putin's budget constraint and lowering the likelihood of Russia's success. This assumes that Ukraine had some kind of private information that sales were going to restart soon, which is possible, but there is no open source information to verify that. But regardless of the possibility of a reopening, we have already seen how foregoing peace benefits makes Russia less inclined to quit, which is bad for Ukraine. Motivation aside, there are still two other problems here. One is the distance. A vessel from Ukraine carrying the explosives would have to travel through the contested Black Sea waters, pass inspections while crossing the Bosporus Strait, traverse the Mediterranean, go through Gibraltar, go all the way around Europe, and make it to the target site. That is possible, but it is asking for a lot. It would be easier for Ukrainian saboteurs to procure everything near the Baltic Sea. Still possible, but not as easy as Russia having everything ready to go. The bigger problem here is the downside risk. If Germany, the United States, or someone else were to discover the operation, it would risk the termination of Western assistance. Things are going well in the war for Ukraine at the moment. Until that changes, it would be foolhardy to take unnecessary chances. And that is why it is unlikely that Ukraine is the culprit. Moving on to suspect number 5, German hardliners. Think of this as the reverse case of an earlier Russian possibility. German hardliners, using that term loosely here, might wish to stand with Ukraine and lock in support for the war effort. When winter arrives, Eurosceptic Germans may begin lobbying to reopen the pipes. Now that option has been taken away from them. The weird part about this possibility is that Germany has kept its distance from Russia despite the Nord Stream shutoff, so there is a good chance that blowing up the pipes is superfluous. As such, we'll put that option to rest for now. Instead, let's advance to suspect number 6, NATO members. This bundles a whole bunch of countries with similar motivations together, including the United States, United Kingdom, and France. Poland and the Baltic states, countries that are generally more skeptical of Russian intentions, are also in the mix here. The logic shares a common theme with German hardliners. Germany chose to pursue energy policies that bind it to Russia, making it a weak link in the united NATO front against Putin. Destroying Nord Stream welds that chain together, preventing Germany from breaking it. That's the motivation anyway.
But the only evidence for the theory is a vague statement President Biden made in February that the United States would bring an end to the pipeline without explaining how. It is a big leap to go from that to one NATO ally destroying another NATO ally's economic lifeline, given the political risks that come along with it. Such an attack would also represent a major shift in US policy. Thus far, Washington has gone to great lengths to not directly involve itself in the war against Russia. Even indirectly, Washington has limited the range of HIMARS rockets given to Ukraine to 90 kilometers, when a 300-kilometer alternative exists. If the United States really wanted to engage Russia, the safer way to do it would be to step up the Ukrainian aid. Having Ukraine take the final military action creates a buffer in terms of retaliation. The timing on this is also weird. There was no closing window of opportunity to destroy the pipeline. Waiting until there was some movement toward them reopening the pipeline would make more sense. Consequently, if this was the United States or NATO allies, it is a puzzling decision. That takes us to the final suspect: gas-producing countries around the world. Perhaps the most basic option are countries that produce natural gas and would benefit from higher prices. Countries that specifically import to Germany would stand to gain the most. Entering 2022, excluding Russia, this was basically just Norway and the Netherlands. Norway received additional attention. The Baltic Pipe, running from Norway to Poland, was set to open imminently at the time of the Nord Stream sabotage. Regardless, these have the same caveats as with the NATO objection. Most producers will soon have access to Germany's markets, as the country is currently installing liquid natural gas terminals. Once complete, any producer could import to Germany by boat. An attack would be an incredibly provocative step and would beg for retaliatory sanctions if ever discovered, though I suppose that the chaos of the war could be a ladder to economic gains. Whom do you want to bring in for questioning? Let me know in the comments. If you want to know more about the war, you will love my book specifically on the causes of it. Check below for more information on that. And if you enjoyed this video, please like, share, and subscribe, and I will see you next time. Take care.